with Marnie Hughes.
And good evening. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, I'm Marnie Hughes. We begin with a rare look at the January 6th committee hearings from today's prime witness on the stand, Chris Stirewalt. Stirewalt, a former political editor for Fox News and now a political editor for NewsNation, testified before House members in a nationally televised hearing, saying that the data showed there was no chance former President Trump could win the 2020 election in a recount or challenge. The committee says that was the basis for what ultimately unfolded at the Capitol on January 6th. In a moment, you are going to hear from Chris Stirewalt himself in an exclusive interview with my colleague, Leland Vittert. First, though, correspondent Kelly Meyer is joining us live from Washington, D.C. tonight with more on what we learned in today's hearing. Kelly.
Good evening, Marnie. Well, this hearing today all focusing on the beginning of this push from the former president in spreading these false claims that the 2020 election was stolen, going against some of his closest advisors and saying that this lit the flame that led to the January 6th attack.
I never saw any evidence whatsoever to sustain those allegations.
Former President Trump's closest advisors, high-ranking cabinet officials, all longtime conservatives, all debunking Trump's claims the 2020 election was stolen.
The numbers tell you the winner and the loser. For the most part, the numbers don't lie.
The majority Democratic January 6th committee hearing testimony and packaging their narrative with excerpts and taped testimony, presenting a picture of the former president turning away from reasoned advice and toward figures who backed up his claim that the election was stolen.
Instead, followed the course recommended by an apparently inebriated Rudy Giuliani to just claim he won and insist that the vote counting stop.
Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, was set to testify in person, pulling out last minute after his wife went into labor. The committee instead playing clips from his private deposition, revealing new details of his personal conversations with Trump, urging him not to declare victory too soon.
My recommendation was to say that votes were still being counted. It's too early to tell, too early to call the race. But, we proud of the race we ran. And we, think we're in good position, and we'll have more to say about this, the next day or the next day, whenever we had something to say.
And did anybody who was a part of that conversation disagree with your message?
Yes.
Who was that?
The president disagreed with that.
Making the call for Joe Biden in the key state of Arizona, NewsNation political editor Chris Stirewalt, formerly from Fox News, testifying live this morning, standing by the decision that signaled Trump was likely to lose the race. Speaking exclusively with NewsNation's Leland Vittert about the criticism surrounding his controversial decision and the hearing itself.
Like I said, you have got a U.S. senator who says I should be fired and I'm part of a cover-up. You have there was sort of this splenetic rage that was pouring out. When Republicans spiked the 9/11 style commission in the Senate, they assumed that we would end up with the same kind of terrible hearing that we usually get from the House or Senate, but usually get from the House. This side runs interference. That side makes little sermonettes, right? They're doing it differently than that. I understand the scripting does not seem authentic and with the flow and all of that stuff, and that is obviously true. But the alternative with this Congress is just moronic, right?
And Marnie, today, Attorney General Merrick Garland is saying they are going to follow the facts wherever they lead and promising to hold anyone criminally responsible accountable regardless of their position. Now, there are two more hearings set for this week. The next one is this Wednesday at 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. Marnie?
Yep, the third one. All right, Kelly, thank you. Another part of the hearing today that stood out particularly was the finances. The committee says that former President Trump and his allies raised $250 million based on claims that the election was stolen, consistently reaching out to donors and misleading them about where that money was going. Noah Bookbinder is a former federal corruption prosecutor and joins us tonight. Noah, thank you for your time. And I'm people at home. We're a little glitchy because we've got some big thunderstorms moving through the Chicago area right now, and we're under a tornado warning. So if you see some tears in your screen, that is what we're dealing with. We're in a safe place. Okay, Noah, the focus right now is on the finances, at least for our purposes, what some on the committee call the big ripoff. Representative Zoe Lofgren said President Trump used lies about fraud as a fundraising tool to the tune, as I said, $250 million. Did the committee reveal anything so far in the hearing that the public did not already know about these funds, where they would go, and what they'd be used for?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had some sense that this was a major fundraising point for them. I don't think we knew precisely that they were claiming the money was for a particular legal defense fund that didn't actually exist. And that is something that, it's significant for a couple of reasons. It first of all suggests an additional motive beyond Donald Trump just wanting to stay in power, but that this was a way to bring in a whole lot of money. And we know that the Trump campaign spent a lot of money at Trump businesses, so there could have been some self-enrichment there. But also that you're not allowed to raise money on false pretenses, at least within some limits. And so, whether this could be a whole other front in terms of civil and criminal violations is something else that that needs to be explored.
Right. So I think what you're getting at, Noah, is fraudulent fundraising could be the grounds for a possible criminal referral. That's outside of the purview of this committee. Clearly, they're making that case to the Department of Justice.
I think that's right. I mean, I think they're going to be making a number of different criminal cases. There's certainly the question of whether Donald Trump committed offenses like conspiracy to defraud the U.S. and obstruction of a government function through the kinds of things that they were talking about prior to that moment. But this fraudulent fundraising could be a whole other grounds for civil and potentially criminal liability.
Is this the right place for that, a hearing on January 6th to talk about the money and the trail?
I don't think it should be the major focus, but it is, I think what the committee is trying to do is to give the full picture of what Donald Trump and others did and what all of the effects were. And the fact that, they spent a lot of today showing, hey, he had to know that this was a lie and he was using it for his own benefit to try to stay in power. This idea that he also may have used it for his own benefit to bring in a whole lot of money further clarifies that picture.
Well, I guess more broadly speaking, then, you talk of who the committee may be trying to reach, and some say they're trying to reach those small donors that received emails on this official election defense fund, try to reach Trump supporters and ask them the question, did you know what your money was going towards?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we got a big sense of today is that it appears that Donald Trump duped his own supporters, that he understood and those around him understood that he lost the election. And yet he whipped people into a frenzy, not just to come to Washington, which resulted in that horrific violence, but also to give a whole lot of money. And, one thing that we found in years of studying corruption and studying anti-democratic abuses is that sometimes what really breaks through to people, what everybody kind of gets in their gut, is when somebody is taking advantage of the system to line their pockets. That's a thing that just people intuitively understand, and I think the committee, sees this as something that Trump supporters or people who maybe haven't been so focused on this January 6th plot will inherently understand. All
right, the next hearing coming up in a couple of days on Wednesday. Noah Bookbinder, appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.